Law enforcement officials of Reddit, what is the most obscure law you've ever had to enforce and how did it happen? Military cop here. When I was stationed in Ozan's Korea, I worked town patrol for about a year and a half. The Air Force has jurisdiction over all military members within a 15-mile radius outside the base. Right outside the base is the Songtan district, which holds 120 plus bars and clubs within a 10-block street. Every night hundreds, sometimes over 1,000, of drunk military members act a fool down there. Every weekend it's even worse. Army, Marines, Navy, and Air Force members all go there from different bases to get drunk and it gets freaking crazy. One night I was making my rounds through some clubs and a guy was sleeping all by himself in a booth inside a club. Our mission is force protection. Essentially we are protecting military assets, people, to continue the mission. So we attempt to wake him up. Seeing as being passed out is a sign of alcohol poisoning. We just want to make sure he's okay. It took me about 5 minutes to bring this guy to consciousness. It took me sternum rubbing him with my Kevlar knuckled gloves to instill enough pain for him to wake up. He asked him to get up and to walk with us to the base so we could make sure he was getting home safely, seeing as his friends had deserted him. Mind you, we technically could have arrested him for public drunkenness right then and there, but I wasn't feeling like a dong that night. I'm more worried about him getting home without getting robbed or hurt. As me and my partner walk him back, he starts off being compliant and thanking us for looking out for him. Then he starts arguing that he's fine and wants to go drink more. No, Eamon, that's out of the question. You're going home. Then he starts arguing that we must let him go to McDonald's and get some food. No, Eamon, I'm not your freaking delivery man. You're going on base. They have 24-hour food spots on base. Go get some food before you go to sleep in your dorm room. Then he starts getting really pee and froggy, pulling away from us and trying to walk faster than us up the street. Stop. You are going home and that's that. Frick you, Price is right. You're a cockholder. You hold my dong. Proceeds to whip his dong out and start pee in the middle of the street. Okay, that's it. Put your dong away and give me your ID card. Now you're getting arrested. Surprise. Guess who is publicly intoxicated, provoking speech and gestures, indecent exposure, and now underage drinking? And to think, if he had kept his mouth shut he could have got away with all of it. All because he wanted to take a nap in the club. Fun times, Korea. Fun times. I missed the last bus from the main gate at Camp Humphreys to the barracks area. At that time a 2-mile walk, so I had to do the walk of shame. It was hot in the middle of the night and about halfway back I sat down in the turtle trap ditch to rest just for a second. Around 6 AM one of the MPs was nice enough to lightly kick me in the stomach so that I could continue my walk. Not a cop, but saw this dude get arrested for the most bizarre thing I'll ever witness. My buddies have a small cottage on a lake in western Michigan, and everyone knows you don't mess with the police on the lake because those guys can be in the water on sea deuce within like 5 minutes after you call. We're sitting out on the dock, and we saw mama duck and a line of ducklings swim past us. They get about 20 or so feet out into the lake past the dock, and this dude rolls up on a jet ski, pulls out a freaking revolver, and caps mama duck. This is a violation of like every hunting and public safety law there is. So we run up to the house and tell our parents, and the police are called. We get back down to the dock, with armed dads in tow, and daddy duck is swimming out to the distraught ducklings. Just as jackass is rolling back up, my friend's dad yells something at him, and the dude, turns out he was very drunk, yells something offensive back, and bam pops daddy duck, right in front of 2 county sheriffs. They managed to arrest him without much brouhaha, but odds are that dude got hit with an amazing fine, lost his driver's license, and probably did some jail time. Tonight on 24 Hours News 8, a man was arrested today after shooting 2 ducks with a revolver on a jet ski while drunk. I once met a man in prison charged with, and I crap you not, cattle rustling. He stole 21 head of cattle and tried to sell them illegally. I learned a lot about cattle farming and crime dealing with livestock. Also I was in prison working there for those that asked what I did to land myself there. Honking your horn in the absence of danger. A motorcycle cop cut me off as I was entering the freeway once with no siren. I didn't recognize he was a cop as it was dark, so I slammed on my horn and he immediately pulled me over. He said that the horn was too late after the instance of danger. got a ticket, and to tack onto that, because he smelled weed, I was handcuffed on the side of the freeway while he waited for backup to help search my vehicle. Had to stand there for nearly an hour in heels. My feet really hurt. There was no weed. Not a cop, but a former roommate was when I went to grad school near Amish country. Bugging under the influence is apparently a thing. It turns out that a non-insignificant number of Amish get drunk and then let the horse go home, because it knows the way. The thing is, the horse doesn't know about stop signs, traffic signals, the speed to go, etc. So the Amish invented the smart-ish car. Crap, I don't even remember the exact wording on the law. Something like assault by bodily excretions or something. I had to look it up. Basically, the guy peed on me, on purpose, while we were trying to arrest him. He also got charged with assault on an officer when he decided pee wasn't working, and resisting, as well as the original trespassing charge that brought us to him in the first place. There's also a legend in my department where an officer needed a reason to chase a guy that he knew to be a felon who carried a gun, so when he caught him, he charged him with firearm by felon and running without a reflective vest at night, which is an actual no, it didn't stick. The firearm by felon and running without a vest charges didn't stick. My charges did. Live in a small rural town, you'd be surprised how many DWIs while driving a tractor lawnmower we give out. And no, we don't write these tickets if we see them mowing their yard with a beer. These people drive this stuff into town to the gas station, Walmart, and other places with beer in hands because they think we can't write them a DWI. My neighbor is an amateur radio. One day he calls me sounding P, asking if I had installed any new electronic devices recently. I didn't, so I said no without knowing what was the problem. 1 week later some technicians from the National Communication Department were knocking at my door handling lots of weird detectors and asking if they could visit my house because the complaint about illegal use of a certain frequencies had been filed against me. They tried every room in the house before finally finding the source. One LED light bulb was apparently sounding weird. They told me to change it but didn't find me. I've heard about this over in England. A guy caused interference on several bands when he opened and closed the fridge door in his garage. Not really an unusual ticket. However, I saw a guy get a DUI and a host of random driving offenses for driving his motorized esky. For all the non-Australians, an esky is a portable cooler, like the ones you take camping. I once knew a guy who got in a fight in a park. The people fighting all agreed to fight, so there wasn't really much of a case for assault and the like. A crowd had gathered to watch, so he was cited for organizing a public sporting event without a permit. Was working in our local entertainment district one night, doing foot patrols walking the beat. Couple of idiots were on their skateboards doing laps up and down the main street where all the clubs were. I don't mind skateboarders, but when you're deliberately harassing people and being dickheads, well, there's a problem. Stop them next time they swung past and got a smuggler not doing anything wrong. You can't stop us, copper. Was quietly pleased to tell them they were. A person shall not travel on a wheeled recreational device on a carriageway during the hours of darkness, i.e. you can't ride a skateboard at night. Go figure. My father was a police officer for 28 years in Colorado. He was parked at an intersection when he noticed some guy sticking his hand out the window to continuously flip him off for the 30 seconds or so they were parked. The flip-off guy then drove forward and immediately got a ticket from my father. Apparently, in Fort Collins, our town, if you stick your left hand out the window in a specific manner, then you have to turn left. It's considered a failure to signal. Then the guy battled it in court and lost, so he had to pay extra. I'm not an officer, but my old neighbor was, and he actually had to arrest someone for walking around with an ice cream cone in their back pocket. It sounds dumb, but this is a rural area with lots of farms, and people who are intending to steal livestock will walk by with ice cream sticking out of their pocket so that animals will follow them. They never have to touch the animals at all. They just walk them out of their pen and into a trailer. For some reason they got away with it for a long time, because some other obscure law said you had to have a rope around the animal for it to be considered stealing. so they started using ice cream to just make them follow. So if any of you ever visit southwestern Kentucky, don't put any ice cream in your pocket. You'll get arrested. I had heard of that law from one of those crazy laws lists and always wondered why it was written. Thanks. Not law enforcement, but I was charged with an obscure citation. When I was 15 I started canvassing for a local window and siding company. We went to a smaller town about an hour away to test our luck without a permit. One of our canvassers had the misfortune of knocking on the door of a security guard that likes to wear his badge around the house. He detained the young lady for not having a DL on her and called the cops. When they arrived they found out we didn't have a permit. Normally they just let us leave with a warning, but this security guard had already contacted KBI. We then find out that in this town the laws regarding solicitation without a permit fall under the same laws as prostitution. At 15 I had to go before a judge and explain how I wasn't selling my body door to door. The judge apologized for not knowing how to handle the situation and dropped the charges. God, I can't imagine being a 15-year-old girl and getting detained at some guy's house. That sounds like unlawful imprisonment to me. Hunting of a small animal out of season. I'm not DNR or a game warden at all, but I caught this 20-year-old dude chasing an injured squirrel down the street. He had shot it 4-5 times with a BB gun, metal pellets. The poor thing was going to die and I wrote that sucker for every possible hunting violation I could. And I confiscated his BB pistol. RIP little squirrel. Squirrels are a huge pests in my area, so sometimes I wish I could hunt them. But that's messed up. No reason to cause suffering when it's easily avoided. Thanks for doing something about it. I had a teacher who was a cop. One time he saw a guy hitting his girlfriend and when he approached them the guy ran. The girl said she didn't want to press charges, so they found the guy up in a tree close by. They arrested him for knocking leaves off a tree in a county park. Everyone telling me it's bulls and I made it up. It's been a while since I've heard the story so I'm probably not remembering it right. It was definitely something about the girl not cooperating with the police and he definitely arrested the guy for what I said. Maybe he wasn't actually hitting her and it was something different. If a police officer witnesses domestic violence, there is no option to press charges by the victim. The officer would be obligated by law to arrest the offender, depending on where you are. Not any type of law enforcement, just heard this story from a friend. He was out on the lake boating with his family. On this lake, there must be one life jacket on board for every person on the boat. There was a random search by the boat police, where they made sure this rule was enforced. Everyone on board had a life jacket, so they weren't worried. Then, the inspector steps on board and starts writing a ticket. Everyone is confused. The inspector says, "There's another person on this boat now. Where's his life jacket?" Just a dong move by the inspector since they had the exact number of life jackets needed for the family. Should have pushed him overboard and watched him drown. My sister rode her bike with another person. A police officer then stopped them. She had to pay €5 because it's not allowed by law to drive a bike with more than one person on it. My brother once was stopped by a cop after crossing a street in the middle. "You know it's illegal to jaywalk," said the cop as he pulled out his pad to write a ticket. My brother pointed down the street to two uniformed cops jaywalking to their car. "What about them?" he said. The cop put away his book and told my brother to not do it again. My friend's kid got a kite stuck in a tree at the park, so I climbed up to get it down for her. A cop charged with me for the illegal act of climbing a tree and injuring or destroying a tree on municipal property. Total charges, $500. Was drinking in the Richmond one night with a friend. A lot. We found a stray shopping cart and decided to give each other rides to get home faster or whatever. I got to go first. It was quite royal. Then I switched places with Buddy and he gets in. As we get moving up 17th he gets on his knees in the front of cart spreading his arms wide and starts yelling, "I'm the king of the world." We make it to our destination but from behind us we hear, "Hey, hey, is that your shopping cart? Get out of there." It was an SFPD and he was giving us the riot act from his car window but then he stops and says, "Hey, how old are you two?" 35, us. Need I say more, says the cop as he drives off. Any Swedish police officer that can tell us about dancing permits? Because that's a special kind of stupid law. Please. You need a permit if you want your guest to be able to dance at a pub nightclub that has a designated area for dancing. PPS. It's really about fire safety, but that law should be applied according to the number of people in a confined space, not if they are dancing or not. Mine's pretty tame really, and not super obscure I guess. I remember getting bitched out for not writing enough tickets, because I wrote exactly 0 speeding tickets my entire time as a military policeman lol. If I saw someone speeding, as long as it wasn't reckless, I'd flip my lights, bump my siren, and when they slowed down, I was happy. Our command even printed out a sheet showing who wrote how many tickets, with emphasis on speeding traffic violations. Anyways, I'm getting bitched out about not writing tickets, so I'm like frick it, and go around writing up tons of tickets for people parking against the flow of traffic. Like, tons of them lol. If your car was parked on a street on say, the right lane, but facing the opposite way, ticket. These were non-monetary tickets mind you, literally not even worth the effort of writing and putting them into our casework system because they mean nothing but basically a warning lol. I wrote massive amounts of them, didn't hear crap about not writing tickets anymore after. I love creative solutions like this, that still avoid unnecessary fines. If I was going 26 in a 25 on base and heard a siren I'd crap myself, then slow down, so your theory does work. I've had to arrest and seize a man's dog for the offense of sheep worrying, Protection of Livestock Act 1953, more common in rural areas. I'm also aware of, but have not enforced, offenses under the Salmon Act 1986, where you can be prosecuted for salmon touching. There's also one for stealing fertilized salmon eggs and the offense sounds physical, something like physical exploitation of salmon, but I'm not too sure. There's also the Badger Act. A buddy of mine got a ticket for doing a wheelie on his bike in 8th grade. Apparently our town has a law about having all wheels of your bike on the ground at all times. He had to pay a $100 fine for it. We laughed at the cop when he approached our group and told us he was quite serious. My dad got a ticket for failure to dim his headlights one time. It was an extremely bumpy road and he was trying to find a hidden driveway. The cop flashed his brights, but the road was so bumpy it looked like everyone was eternally flashing their lights. People in NYC get arrested every day for putting a foot up on a subway seat and or taking up 2 subway seats. Always in the middle of the night when no one needs the extra seat. Source: Work in Public Defense in NYC. My cousin is a cop in Kentucky. His department has a pool for the most ridiculous arrest. So far nothing exciting, but there is a law that makes it illegal to carry an ice cream cone in your pocket in public. Going back to horse thieves apparently doing this to get the horses to voluntarily follow them. So we have a deal that the next time I'm in Kentucky I'd walk down the street with an ice cream cone in my pocket and let him arrest me. I'm leaving in half an hour to go visit him and other family at his new house. Wish me luck. I took a guy for trafficking some serious drugs. At time of arrest he had heroin, pills, coke, crack, and bath salts. I called a detective for advice and he gave me a few questions to ask the guy. Post Miranda he sang like a bird because he wanted to roll on his buddies to make a deal. Because of his admissions I got to charge him for illegal use of a two-way communication device, which is a felony, for using his phone to sell drugs. Also drunk guy steals cab, crashes cab. I find drunk guy outside of cab asleep. Can't charge DUI because no one saw him drive. DUI case lawyers a pain, but damaging property more than $1,000 in the process of stealing it is a first-degree felony. That one was rare for me. Theft of Farmville crops. The victim, we'll call him Joe, went to the public library where when you sign on to the computers you are allowed to do whatever for the allotted amount of time, usually 30-minute slots. Joe was farming his crops up until his time was up. When his time was up, the computer locks and waits for the next user. It doesn't close browsers or clear history or allow you to log off. Next guy comes in and logs on, wipes Joe's crops out completely. I was still finishing training and thought I was being punked. Pretty hard to take someone seriously when they're wanting felony charges of theft for their virtual crops. He was serious, very serious and very furious. I didn't know how to handle a virtual theft. Now I do. My boyfriend is a bylaw officer in a small town. My favorite story of his is about the lady with barbed wire all over her yard. He received a complaint from her neighbors and went to check the place out. She had completely covered her bushes and trees and the top of her fence in barbed wire because she was convinced that her neighbors had trained their cats to dig up a garden. They were throwing them over the fence, she said, so there was obviously no other alternative. He spent 20 minutes fighting with her about why she needed to take it down before he came up with an idea she was satisfied might work. Use motion detector sprinklers to keep the cats away. So she takes down the wire. He gives her a warning, and everyone seems happy. A week later he gets another call saying the barbed wire is back up. He goes to check it out and sure enough she has doubled the amount of wire and is furious when she sees him pull up. The cats love the sprinklers. They would run in and out of them all day playing and now the yard is wet and muddy. The neighbors hated her and were using their cats to drive her insane. After an hour of trying to sort out her psychobabble and reason with her, he gave up and just handed her a huge fine. In Bavaria, there is the so-called Tanzverbot. It's a law that forbids dancing after 12 p.m. before certain Christian public holidays. This law is getting enforced until today and I kid you not. 3 times a year the cops pull up to our local club, check if people are dancing and leave. Club owners get fined a decent sum if they don't abide that law. There are several movements trying to remove this relic, but Bavaria is basically the German Alabama, so yeah, it's gonna take some time. Not a cop, but a prosecutor had a charge forwarded to me by the State Fish and Wildlife Commission of 2 guys who were fishing in a local lake. They had caught 18 black bass, and there is a statute making it illegal to take more than 5 black bass per person per day from a lake. They had 9 each. I'm guessing they were a giant dong to the wildlife law enforcement officer because my paralegal said that was the first time she saw that charge in 12 years at the office. It was about 0300 when I came across a drunk standing on the sidewalk urinating on a church. I arrested him under one of the subsections of disorderly conduct for creating, a hazardous or physically offensive condition by any act, which serves no legitimate purpose. Gave him an appearance ticket and went on my way. A couple of weeks later I found out that the judge had dismissed the charge because he considered the need to urinate as a legitimate purpose. A kid I knew in high school was caught throwing rocks at a duck in British Columbia. He was given a ticket for a few $100 that was labeled as molesting wildlife. Snicker. I am not law enforcement, but I watched someone get arrested for public spitting. Later I read about it in the Boston Globe. The person was apparently some sort of organized crime and the cops wanted an excuse to hold him for the night and sweat him a bit. Some odd things I've written, usually in lieu of a moving violation. Temple width on sunglasses too thick, obstructed view, something hanging from the rear view mirror, music too loud, driving with headphones in, tread depth on tires too thin, failure to change address on registration or driver's license within 10 days of moving, license plate light burned out, no front plate, rear plate partially obstructed by tow hitch. The cigarette out the window law applies to any portion of a cigarette, lit or unlit, so ashing out the window is good enough. Cyclist riding wrong way, not having your headlights on when your windshield wipers are on. Not mine, but I know of people who have arrested people for DUI in a golf cart, a pocket bike, and a Power Wheels Barbie car. I'm sure there are more. Those are just the ones I can think of off the top of my head. Yes, I get it. I'm a big, sloppy bag of dongs. Some of you hopefully are missing the point though. The question was, what is the most obscure law you've ever enforced? I don't go around looking for all these violations. I've only ever written most of them in lieu of a moving violation ticket, like speeding, effectively cutting the driver a break. If that makes me a bag of dongs, I gladly accept the title. Usually in lieu of a moving violation. Good officer right there. I'd gladly accept a light bulb out ticket over a speeding ticket any day. Thanks for being reasonable. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.